Oh my mother family, the situation is critical at Red Bull. After a start in which Verstappen found himself practically cornered, he couldn't do anything. He found a disoriented Red Bull, a Red Bull that wasn't working at all, an unstable Red Bull that overheated, and that will have consequences. Look there at how he's boxed in. At this moment, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cars ahead of Max. Max is in 9th position, fighting with Carlos Sainz. Notice that he has Tsunoda right behind him. From this moment on, the Red Bull hasn't worked, and obviously the consequences are already arriving. For now, Helmut Marko says that they are very worried, and among all this, Verstappen is frustrated. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. The reason he's frustrated, which we're going to show, is because of this. The race pace compared to the winning car. And we all know the supposed clause that Verstappen has, and there's very little left before we reach that outcome. Welcome to Sport Maniaticos, Formula 1 section on YouTube. Stay, enjoy, and give a mega like this big if you want these videos too. And Formula 1 information straight to your veins. The way we Sport Maniaticos like it. Let me see how they grow in these videos. Yes, I like that. And we'll give much more, because things are getting very interesting. Do you remember the clause that we revealed? Which among other people, Diego Flores talked about there, that where Verstappen in the first 6 races, if he wasn't in the top 3, could have a release clause. Well, notice that we've now had 4 races, and we can draw some conclusions, right? After what happened at the Bahrain Grand Prix, Verstappen, who, if not for Japan, where he had a race unworthy of the Red Bull, and where he took all the credit, notice that he's only 6 points ahead of George Russell and Mercedes. We know that supposedly there are many offers for him. We also know that we think Aston Martin might be a better project for him, but that will be part of future chapters. First, we have to experience what's happening intensely, because the battle isn't letting up. You've already seen statements from Christian Horner, who is directly trying to praise the car, but now he can't anymore. In fact, I haven't found his post-race statements. After many of Norris's mistakes, after a Piastri who is improving, 77 points for Norris, 74 for Piastri, Verstappen sees himself already far behind with 69. He's nearly 10 points off the lead. That's not good news. And let's remember that in 4th position is Russell, then 5th is Leclerc, who's far off. But look at that position of Verstappen. That would give him freedom under the clause. Be careful with that. Why? Because Verstappen is looking at telemetry, at lap times. And all this will lead to consequences. Obviously, Verstappen doesn't want a car that's not champion-worthy, and we know that. Verstappen had to spend the race fighting in the middle zone against all kinds of cars. And I ask you, do you think it excites him to have to fight, for example, with a Williams? Carlos doesn't like having to be there either, but look how they fought tooth and nail, former teammates from the Red Bull Junior program. Do you remember before Verstappen's debut in 2016 in Barcelona, where he won his first race in a Red Bull and where I was at the Barcelona circuit? Notice here how Carlos Sainz pushes him off track. Verstappen doesn't give in. Verstappen is pushing just as hard as Carlos Sainz. It's not a driver issue, it's clearly a car issue. And Christian Horner won't be able to hide it. Why? Because beyond seeing it in the onboard footage, but it's also very apparent in the telemetry. Look here, it's spectacular. Verstappen, in the first laps, where he was right there, as I showed you at the start, in the front positions, 138.0, 138.7, he's losing an average of 7/10. But the moment degradation comes along, a problem for Red Bull that I'm going to show you in this video, and a very serious one that could be decisive for Verstappen to make a decision. Look how it goes. Look how it starts here at 138.0, 138.4 4/10. If I go a bit further, here I see a difference of only 2/10. but that's a mirage. 2/10 in favor of Piastri, but then half a second. Then 138.5 versus 149.3, 8/10. Then 138.8 versus 139.6, 7 or 8/10 again. Verstappen is forced to pit earlier. You see that the blue line goes up earlier than the orange line for Piastri. See how Piastri's line also goes up. This was a race with a lot of degradation. And in a race with so much degradation, you learn a lot about how the car works at the crucial moment. As I've been saying, these are 6 races. We've had 4. We have Saudi Arabia and Miami left, where Miami will be similar to Bahrain. And who knows about Saudi Arabia? Maybe Ferrari, well, we'll see. But after that, they put on different tires. Verstappen had a harder compound that went very poorly for Red Bull, and then they put on medium. The medium tires, look directly here, where Verstappen is doing 1 minute 36.2 seconds and 1 minute 37.1 seconds, 9/10 slower. Notice that Piastri is close to 136.0, and in the end, he drifts off a bit. But not much-ish. But by the last lap, he's at 136.5. Notice Verstappen starts at 136.6 behind that line. And where does he end? He ends in 138.0, family. Have you noticed how serious this degradation is? Look at that blue line going up. This is very serious and it has no solution. There's an image worth 1,000 words for when in the press someone says, it's not the car, it's not the driver. Because here they're going to try everything. Some on one side of the clause, like I've been telling you for weeks, and others on the other. But what you can see clearly, if you allow me a second, is directly an image worth 1,000 words. And it's not this one of Flavio Briatore before the race started, but this one from lap 21, Red Bull's strategy engineer. Look at her face upon seeing Verstappen in 8th position, being overtaken by Antonelli and pressured by Duan in 9th position, family, with an Alpine that is indeed improving because of everything they're doing with the wind tunnel, etc. But what is happening with Red Bull? This is the face. This is the moment caught on camera. And I wanted to show you the exact frame so you understand that at Red Bull, a rift is going to open sooner rather than later. It's evident, right? Now that I've shown you telemetry, the expressions, the videos, the standings, and told you about the clause, it's time to see what the main figures have to say. First of all, Helmut Marko, right? Because we know Marko is always the first one who, when there's noise to be made, he's the first to come out and make it. He says Red Bull is holding a crisis meeting, and Marko admits they're very worried. He won't come out with the clause because that's information we'll see if it's true or not. But normally, that doesn't get published. What does come out are statements that might make you think if it's true or not. As I've been telling you for weeks, no, months, weeks, Verstappen's clan, Verstappen, Helmut Marko, Jos Verstappen, seems to be making statements to a court in order to enforce the clause. And Christian Horner seems to be doing the opposite. And if you look at statements, you'll see how Horner always says, yes, because the car has improved, because this and that. Whereas Verstappen or Marko always try to puff up Verstappen. It's obvious. If you read between the lines, you see what they're doing, right? Max Verstappen, in his opinion, everything that could go wrong went wrong. Motorsport labels him frustrated. The race pace was really bad, he says, but he didn't expect it to be this bad. He's more disappointed than usual. Another layer, everything that could go wrong went wrong. That probably made things a bit worse, Verstappen says, but if we look at where we finished, that's probably the best we could have done. He doesn't even care about the pit stops or the problems, which were big. The brakes were slightly better today because we were allowed to change the equipment, but the problem isn't just the brake penalties, which aren't yet what we want, but that the tires overheated. So when I brake, I don't feel anything, because it's very easy to lock both the front and rear tires at the same time, you know. They're losing the ability to set up a Formula 1 car within the Red Bull team. Be careful. Things are starting to get more serious than it might seem. There was a time in 2023 when Aston Martin went from getting podiums to the midfield. Be careful with Red Bull. We lacked balance. And at this track, that stands out even more. If you don't have balance in your legs and you don't manage the tires, or you manage them worse than the rest, at this track it's even worse, Verstappen said. It's clear that it's not good to wait so long, says the four-time champion, hoping it's just an isolated problem. There were two different problems, so this isn't normal for us, referring to the pit stops, which as you've seen were chaotic for Red Bull, even with Tsunoda. The situation is alarming, and meanwhile, the championship is slipping away, which hurts the most. Hence Marko's statements that they're very worried. He literally says there are things happening at the moment. As always, Marko throws it out there, and whoever knows how to catch it, catches it. We have our Marko baseball glove, and we know how to catch that ball. Because it's obviously a clear message if you know how to interpret what's happened in the last weeks and months. Meanwhile, the championship is slipping away, just like it could slip away for Norris. Norris admits he made too many mistakes in the Bahrain race. What a spectacle, truly. Lando Norris, who I still trust will bounce back, I want to see a balanced championship. For now, he's still leading, but just by 3 points ahead of Piastri. His enemy is no longer Verstappen, who no longer has a car, but right there, in the other side of the garage, Oscar Piastri. Be careful, because this enemy could be brutal, like Verstappen. Norris says, I guess I didn't think I was that far forward on the grid at the start. That's all. Norris reflected after the race. Remember, Norris also had problems with the grid positioning. This has happened to many drivers, and he was penalized. He had a slower pit stop. Notice that the exact moment was this, where all the drivers were well aligned. Remember that from that white line, you can't position yourself outside it. Norris was indeed positioned outside it, which is how he took the start. And clearly the FIA has a sensor to determine if you're over the white line before the lights go out and the start is given. So Lando Norris was penalized and had a tricky race. You can't afford that kind of mistake when you have a very motivated Piastri, much more capable in 2024 of winning the title. Norris kept saying, it was a tough race. I made too many mistakes in overtaking. I was out of position. It was a tough race for me, and I'm disappointed not to bring a 1-2 home for McLaren. What a grand show that would have been at home. A tough race, but with some positive aspects. A Norris who, let's just say, started far back because yesterday he didn't have a good quali, but had a great start. He had no excuse, Norris. Notice he had Gasly in front of him. Alpine's great quali, with Gasly showing he's a great driver and that the car is finally working well. Notice here how at the start he goes past Gasly, past Leclerc, gains positions, and suddenly we see Norris who can already fight for the lead. Look at Russell up front. Russell is always amazing. Look at how Russell squeezes Piastri. Russell doesn't care who's in front. But Norris had a good start, and then gradually things came up. We have the summary at Sport Maniaticos, and you can see the whole thing, right? I made too many mistakes in overtaking, Norris said. In the final lap, I could have finished second. I was out of position. It was a complicated race for me, and I'm disappointed not to bring home 1 million pesos for McLaren. It was a good race all around, so I'm not complaining. It was fun, some good overtakes, but everyone was tough and on the limit, as it should be. George did a good job, and I thought I'd be able to catch him, Norris added, but I guess he was probably saving a bit before the end and did well. That's not true. If you watch the summary, you'll see that the problem wasn't him not catching up. He did catch him, as you can see here in the final laps. At turn 1 of the circuit on the last lap, and he tries to go around the outside. At that point, he should have prepared to overtake in turn 3 or 4. Notice how he arrives with no possibilities because he fails in that attempt. Instead of making a small loop, obviously this is a major mistake when it's the last lap. Again, and notice it's lap 57, and he could have gotten 3 more points that, without a doubt, could be decisive in the championship. Last year, those points ended up being decisive in Verstappen's favor. No, George did a good job, and I thought I'd be able to catch him, says Norris. Well, we saw you caught him, and you couldn't pass him. Oscar also did a good job, so congratulations to Oscar and the whole McLaren team. I tried to make a step forward, and I'll try to do so for the next race. Norris has to get moving, but what's happening is different from what's happening at Red Bull. Norris can react. Norris has the car. Who doesn't have the car? And that's why motorsport labels him frustrated, is Verstappen. And you can see it in the telemetry. He's very far off from where he wants to be. This degradation already shows what can happen over the season. And for now, sticking to the supposed clause, if it's true, there are 2 races left. No improvements are expected, as Marko told you. And Verstappen is already third, 6 points away from activating that alleged clause that could let him negotiate with other teams. My goodness, what's coming? We can't wait for Saudi Arabia.